to The High Line, a weekly podcast about all things NASCAR and sim racing. Join your hosts, Elliot, John, Mike, Matt, and Rick to review this weekend at the track.
Each week, they tackle events trackside, news, and of course, the rumor mill. Stay up to date each week by subscribing to The High Line. Brought to you by the iRacing Warrior Network.
So without further delay, move up to The High Line.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The High Line, brought to you by the IWM Racing Network. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've had great success. We appreciate those who have added us and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm Rick Souza, and I'm joined here by my co-host tonight.
I'm Elliot.
I'm John.
All right. And we'll take you through basically sim racing and our series, which is Tech4Troops, as well as what's happened around the world in racing. So kicking right off, we had our fifth race of the season at Michigan International Raceway.
And was it not easily the best race of the season? And I would say, I hate to go back to Richmond, but I'm going to go back to Richmond. Richmond was arguably and probably the worst race we've ever had. There's a couple others that are contending for that title. But to go from that race to the race we had at Michigan, which I think is probably the best race we've ever had, was really nice to see.
Yeah, we had 38 entries, 11 of the teams competing. Just great racing and lead changes. Just a blast.
And one thing I've noticed with this season so far is that we've had a very diverse group of winners. Think about Luke Bullard at the beginning of the season getting that win, and Zach Allen getting the win this past week at Michigan. This has been, I think, the most competitive season yet.
Yeah,
we've had great diversity there. At the same time, we've seen, whereas last season we had a couple of teams really dominate, and this season has pretty much been up for grabs.
Well, 5 races, 5 different winners. The last one we just mentioned, the most recent, Zach Allen, a self-proclaimed part-timer. Aramis Castro, last year's champion, finished second. And Sammy Harrell, one of the new guys this year, finishing third. And Aramis, I was able to talk to him a little bit after the race. And, his MO is to kind of not necessarily be up front, to purposely drop back to 10th or 15th or even farther back. And he's been doing that this year, and it hadn't worked out for him. He's had some bad finishes because he's gotten into some accidents. And kudos to Zach, because that's exactly what Aramis did this week, and then he did show his speed at the end, but he couldn't catch Zach.
No, Zach really had it dialed in as far as his line on the track, and he stayed true to that pretty much the whole race. All right, so each week we do have a guest to join us here in the podcast. Usually it's the race winner, but this week we tried to shake things up, and we were able to convince Jason Parker with Tech4Troops, who is our sponsor, to join us here on the podcast and talk about who Jason Parker is and about Tech4Troops. So, Jason?
I couldn't be happier to be here, and I feel like who Jason Parker is a really it's a footnote compared to everything else that's going on here. So first, I want to thank you guys, Rick, Elliot, John. You're just the best guys I could imagine working with on our endeavors. So first, thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
We're so glad you could join us.
And as I said, Jason Parker is a footnote, if that. What Tech4Troops is, and tech4troops.org is the address, of course. Please check us out. We are a nonprofit organization, 501(c)(3) as signed off by the official people that sign those things off. We bridge the gap between technology and veterans. When I say veterans, it's a loose definition. We also are happy to work with active military spouses, families, support, and veterans, spouses, families, and support. We offer no-cost computers to them and training, along with online training and courses certification through the Coursera application. And that really helps veterans get a step up in obtaining more at the current job that they're working at. These certifications are something as simple as an MSDS certification to get them trained in a toxic spill or a tuberculosis outbreak. These aren't things that are happening every day. But if you work at the local Walmart or Target, these are things that are going to enhance your life. They're going to get you an extra $1.50 on that paycheck. And some of the other services that we offer, once you get in here, I think could really, well, I don't think, I know, could really be a leg up. But as when I speak on all of the races, I generally have 1.5 billion things to say. And so I just want to put my final plug in there that my baby, Tech4Troops Gaming, the program that's been going on close to when I started at Tech4Troops, aims to drive down the number of veteran suicides a day. I feel extremely strongly about that, being a suicide survivor myself. I have a few other things in that doesn't really they don't come out at cocktail parties, checkmark box there, but it's just more of the reasons that we formed the Discord group that we have through Tech4Troops and our Twitch channel that just aims to bring veterans and people orbiting that military community in crisis situations or even periods leading up to that, where we are not mental health professionals. We know the number is 988, and we know that a bad day can make the difference for anyone. And so what we aim to do is to reach out and be there instead of screaming into the void. Race with us, take a couple laps, get out some of the bad feelings, and let's talk some more, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Jason, I know you said you're a footnote to all this, but we'd like to know a little bit about that footnote if we can. You're a veteran yourself, correct? Obviously.
Yes, I am. I'm a veteran of 2 branches of the service. I started with the United States Navy as a bosun mate, and I completed my service with the United States Army as a combat medic, 68 Whiskey. Yep.
And how did you become involved with Tech4Troops, if I might ask?
So that's a really cool story, and I'm going to make it germane to the conversation as I might. I am a geek. I am a geek, a nerd, a whatever you want to classify us as. I am very particular about my likes and about what goes on around me since obtaining a couple of traumatic brain injuries throughout my time with the service. And I find so much comfort, and I've found I want to say a place, but it's more of a community of like-minded veterans, like-minded people that support veterans, and just fellow nerds and geeks, where I fell in love with cars at an incredibly early age. I mean, I want to say that my first love was Anton Furst's design of the Batmobile from the 1989 Batman. And I know so much about it. It was inspired by H.R. Geiger. It could only go 45 seconds on a full tank of gas because that was a real Pratt & Whitney jet turbine in there. And they demonstrated that on Batman Returns and his fight with the Red Triangle Circus Gang from the pen. I have so much knowledge of comics and their movie properties that I've been shoved in my locker more times than I'd care to recall. And the thing is had I been born a couple decades later, I would be the coolest mofo to walk into any high school because I have an encyclopedic knowledge of the Avengers, and I can tell you the Justice League story down to. Anyway.
No, that's really cool. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but my love and what drew me to cars, period, is Knight Rider. There is nothing cooler than the Knight Industries 2000, piloted by Michael Knight.
Now, I've seen you, Jason. I didn't think you were that old. I thought Knight Rider was maybe just a little bit before your time.
And it may have been previous, so I'm 42. I was born in 81. So, yes, I did not make it for the early episodes. I was not cognizant of what was going on, but I knew very much that flashing, sliding back and forth red light, I wanted that in every car. And side note to history, if you do decide to put it in the engine compartment in the front of a Jeep Cherokee, the police in Newport News, Virginia will ask you very politely to remove it and to no longer use it while driving. I thought it was so cool, and they did not, was the big but it. Yes, I'm not that old, but it was an early memory. And Mr. Feeney, the teacher from Boy Meets World, speaking as an autonomous car.
He was Kit, right?
Yep, Kit. Yep. There's nothing better to me. That when I finally got my GPS to have the voice of Kit, I stopped trying. Honestly, yeah.
So that flashing red light back and forth also brings up a Battlestar Galactica.
The Cylons, absolutely.
The Cylons,
yeah, no, I will whip out my inner geek here. Yeah, I 100% know what you're talking about.
So is it fair to say, I know you mentioned your love for cars, is it fair to say you've always been into gaming, been a gaming geek, if you will? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. And driving games were one of my first loves.
I was gonna say, so what's the first game you remember playing as a child, I guess?
So I was kept away from video games until a relatively older age. I mean, just for the sake of playing video games. My parents saw that their firstborn son clearly had an addiction tendency and was eyeing up that Nintendo aisle in the KB Toys real well. And so they were like, let's keep them away. But apparently I had broken them down or finally gotten around to attempting enough good grades that my Christmas present circa 6th grade was a Super Nintendo with the game F-Zero, which was an anti-gravity race game in 16-bit. And I've never come across anything cooler. And to this day, on my Nintendo Switch that I bought strictly to play Animal Crossing with my son, who barely acknowledges that I exist, the only thing I play on that is F-Zero Super Nintendo style.
I get to play F-Zero on my son's Switch. It's on there, so we get to play that sometimes.
That's fantastic.
I do know that game. Oh. We usually ask, I guess I can ask you who your favorite NASCAR driver is, but I was really going to try to widen it a little bit, make it a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so I'll let you answer that. But I was going to ask you, what is your favorite sports movie of all time?
Oh, man. Okay, so favorite sports movie of all time. So, all right, so I'm going to back up just a little bit to justify my answers, because as someone that thinks a little outside the box, I feel like I need to kind of justify why I go so far out there. So favorite sports movie of all time, it's going to be Basketball. I know that is contentious as a number one, considering it's Matt Stone and Trey Parker from South Park fame, and a movie that they completely made up the sport for. But I still think that the humor there and the parallels that they draw to mainstream media and sports hold up. I think they're fantastic. But that being said, Days of Thunder was fantastic. Big Tom Cruise fan when it comes to his 80s stuff. Top Gun, Days of Thunder. Those are easily up there.
Of course, I know Days of Thunder. I have to admit, I've never seen basketball, so I can't. Maybe Rick or John have seen that one.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It's fantastic, but it needs to make your list there. Yeah, absolutely. Favorite sports movie up there, but I can give you a pretty consolidated pick on my favorite drivers come NASCAR.
We usually say favorite driver, past or present, or however you want to answer that.
Okay, so I do a lot of things in my recovery and my therapy with the VA, and I will always tell all my therapists this to preface anything that I might say. My number one goal is always to make myself laugh. And second is to make those around me laugh. So that being said, my favorite NASCAR driver of all time has got to be Dick Trickle. Fantastic, without a doubt.
Great
He's
choice.
there. Thank you very much. But my probably for real answer would be Richard Petty. He opened a car wash around the area where I grew up, a little north of Allentown, Pennsylvania. I knew that he was in and out of there a lot. I don't know if that was his home area, but Richard Petty came up a lot in my childhood, and so I always thought he was pretty cool.
Well, you have easily, by far, answered that question the best of anyone we've had on the show so far. Did a great job.
Hey, all right. Thank you.
That's a great answer, Jason. So I got to ask you just the next question. Who's your favorite current driver if you had to pick one?
Oh, and here's where I'm just going to bomb out.
Be careful. Be careful.
So my favorite current driver, I don't know if this is NASCAR, and I know that this may be not what you guys were looking for, but Colin Garrett is a favorite of mine. He is the driver for the Team 1111 Veteran Project. So we are doing some work with them. He's my favorite. I don't think he races NASCAR. So if there's any left from the Petty dynasty, I guess I would pick them.
Well, let me tell you, Colin is a much better answer than the ones we've heard just recently. So we're fine with that.
He's a great guy.
And he has run some truck races, so we can consider him a NASCAR driver. Absolutely.
He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, we've been happy to actually have his participation in the IWM series.
Yeah, he's racing here with us the past few races. Yeah. That's fantastic. And
very cool.
Tech4Troops is doing something with him come June 17th at the Virginia International Raceway. I'm very excited for that announcement. But just hanging out with him, absolutely such a cool thing.
Well, Jason, we're glad you're here. We can't be any more happy with our relationship between IWM and Tech4Troops. At this point, we move on and talk about the weekend in racing. You're more than welcome to stay with us if you want.
I absolutely think I'm gonna. I mean, you guys are just incredibly personable, so let me hang out and let's get down to it.
All right, on to our next segment, This Week in Racing, and this was a racing weekend. There was F1, there was Indy, and then there was NASCAR on top of that. So let's start with F1. F1 was in Monaco, and it's a very classic track for F1, and it really was it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and we see this every year with Monaco. It's a track that has very little overtaking abilities, and the one really, kind of crucial element of this race is when the rain came there around, I think it was flat 40 to 60. I can't remember where the rain started, but that really threw kind of a wrench in the race. And actually, I don't know if anybody tuned in, but Fernando was coming down pit road before the rain started and was like, hey guys, I think we need to put the intermediate rain tires on. And they're like, oh, no, we're not. We're going to wait till the rain comes. And he's like, no, I think we need to put the rain tires on. Next thing you know, he has to basically make an extra stop. They put on, I believe at that time they were hard tires. And then he went on the intermediates and could have possibly beat Max. But you're right, Rick. It was a typical Monaco weekend, and we saw Verstappen obviously do what Verstappen does and wins a race, and by the whole track, laps the field multiple times, so all that fun stuff.
Well, the real thing about Monaco is that it's almost no longer about where you finish in the race; it's how well you qualify.
Correct. I mean, it's if you qualify first or second, you're basically setting yourself up to win. If you're, I think I'm looking back at some stats, I think nobody has won from the 5th, 6th, or 7th place position at Monaco. I know 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th have won, but it's been a very long time since some of those have happened. So it's all about qualifying and getting out front because you can't pass.
Well, so if we are talking about Monaco, I assume we're also talking about Iron Man 2, where Tony Stark took out Whiplash on one of those straightaways using the Mark V armor. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, that was one of my favorite scenes, combining my two passions of Marvel movies and racing together. And when I saw that scene, I was like, I know what my new
and Mickey Rourke just killing it in there too. Not typically killing it, but killing it there. As somebody that's been to Monaco, I did make a deployment that way on the Enterprise where we stopped at Caen, France. There were trains going over that way, and it's the only place I have walked into a McDonald's with both a Ferrari and a Lamborghini parked out front. And Jason, it wasn't a big deal.
Talking about talking about Iron Man 2 would be more exciting than talking about the F1 race at Monaco, because it was a snoozer beyond snoozers beyond snoozers.
As I put it, it's like watching paint dry, except for when the rain showers came.
Sure,
I mean, it was how it is. Yeah.
The fact that everybody has been bantering about is the fact that since 1996 was the last time anybody challenged someone for the lead at Monaco.
Sure. Okay. I did not know that.
That was the last time there was an on-track pass for the lead, 27 years ago.
I understand the whole, I mean, I wouldn't want to pass anybody on a coffin with 4 wheels either. It just, I mean, it's intense.
Well, the other thing is that the cars of today versus the cars of yesteryear in F1 are wider and longer, which further complicates the facts that that's a street course.
Well, look, I've talked about it, and we haven't talked about it on this podcast until now. I don't hate F1. I try to watch it occasionally when I can, but every race, literally every race, is just a race to turn one, and whoever gets to turn one on lap one wins the race. It's over 3 seconds into the race.
I feel very similarly about basketball. It's a back and forth until there's a point where somebody can't go back. I know that's a simplification, but I get what you're saying there. Yeah.
All right. After F1, you have the obviously classic, the Indianapolis 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Great race.
Now I saw the first 50 or 60 laps of this race. It was great. It was the, I don't want to say it's the best Indy 500 I ever saw, but really, really entertaining. I missed the middle part of the race. I had a baseball game to go to. I managed to come back at the end and see the last restart. It was really interesting that they restarted from pit road with 2 to go and took the green with 1 to go. And just did 1 green flag lap. The haters, the naysayers, the rumor guys on Twitter and such were saying that, Roger Penske owns the track. His driver was in second. And had his driver been in first, they never would have done that. I don't think that's the case, but I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where it makes sense on both sides. I agree with you, Elliot. It's the possibility of that happening. I mean, I know he owns the track, but I mean, kind of give me a break, because they red flagged the previous two. I think it was the previous two cautions, because they wanted to get the most race time and they wanted to finish under green. And the thing is they were right there. I don't think it mattered who was in the lead at that point. Truthfully, they just wanted the cars to finish under green, and I'm glad they did, because I don't know about anybody else, but when I love seeing Newgarden win because he's a Tennessee guy. He's actually my favorite IndyCar driver. But seeing him pretty much essentially commit to pit road on that last turn coming out of 4 and just swing the car wide, swing the car left, it terrified me, because I was like, oh my gosh, is he really going to try that? And he did. It was an incredible finish. And also, we got to definitely talk about that tire. I mean, that's the talk of the weekend. That tire that broke off of was it Kirkwood's car, I believe, and flew luckily between two full grandstands and hit the front of a Chevrolet Cruze, I believe.
Just luck of the draw that it didn't go in the stands. Yeah.
I know I may not be the most popular guy bringing up when Dane Cook was funny, but wasn't that one of his first jokes about the tire and the person going, no, I will not? I'm just saying that was hilarious. And tires flying off into the stands are only funny if they do not kill people.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. There was a lot of people that were comparing this to what was the movie? Oh my goodness, Final Destination.
And a good one that one is.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, I think I've seen this before, and everybody commenting was like, oh yeah, Final Destination in real life, and I was like, no, that would be terrible. It's a movie, of course. That was, I'm not going to say hilarious, but it was a very similar situation. Thank God it only hit a car. On that situation. But yeah, that was a very scary moment, I think, for everybody.
I find it hilarious when anything stops something called a Chevy Cruze, because initially the name's just out of there. Bam. But that's just my take.
Have any of you watched on ESPN the drone races?
So I am a huge fan of these, the drone FPV races. I'm trying to get them brought. I want Tech4Troops to sponsor these so bad. So please write me at gamemaster@tech4troops.org. If you can bring drone racing, I'll bring the IWM guys into it. It'll be huge. I promise you. This is one of the things I'm so serious. I want to get into this.
So if you've never seen it before, it's like dancing fireflies through through this darkened area they have.
I love that poem you just made. But you're right. Yes.
I mean, they've got to navigate these obstacles around this track and each other, and they're crashing.
DRL.
But they're zipping. Yeah, but they're
Drone racing live
around each other. That's what Indy looks like to me on those restarts. It's just, I don't know how they avoid each other at 200 plus inches apart and just darting, because those cars just have so much downforce around each other. It's crazy.
I mean, yeah, they call it the greatest spectacle in racing for a reason. And yeah, the first little bit, I mean, you could argue was slightly a snoozer a little bit. But they were, I mean, the speeds they hit, the moves they make, the amount of downforce that those cars have. Yeah, people may say, oh, those cars are ugly. But gosh, don't they put on a show? That's all I got to say. That Indy 500 was impressive.
The ugliness stems with so many naysayers about the halo and the windscreen that was introduced, but God, it saves lives.
It saved. I think it was Kirkwood. I may be completely wrong on that, but the car that hit off that clipped. I can't remember. I think it was Kirkwood who, when his tire fell off, he hit the wall and flipped into the fence. Halo first. And a lot of people on social were like, why was his face mask down in the middle of the wreck? And I was like, you do realize he went 180 miles per hour into a wall, flipped against the catch or against the safer barrier. And I mean, the G-force with that is unknown. Because, I mean, we saw Max Verstappen, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, with a 51G wreck into the wall. I can't imagine what it's like in an Indy car at Indianapolis.
So I heard the number. I heard the number. It was an 80.
80 G's. 80. Goodness gracious.
And the impact flipped his, so he flipped the visor ended up coming up about halfway.
So that's stuff that fighter pilots for the armed services haven't even experienced. And it's so cool that we're getting those numbers from the way that we can detect force from stuff. Man, that's neat. What a neat branch of science.
All right, so on to NASCAR and on to Charlotte, which unfortunately and quite oddly had one of the wettest weekends we've ever had. I happened to be in the Charlotte market, and God, it just rained all weekend. We had 2 races scheduled. Well, I guess the truck race got off, but then the race for Saturday was pretty much rained out after the first stage, and was rescheduled onto Monday, which they started and then had to stop it because of rain again, and wound up being restarted. I think it kicked off at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yep, that's correct. I caught the tail end of that one, and Allgaier, he had the pole. He beat John Hunter there at the end with Cole Custer, the ex-Cup driver, there in third. The fuel strategy was absolutely wild to see, because Allgaier had to save 2 full laps, and nobody knew if he could make it. I was watching the end of this, and I was like, okay, here comes the entire field down pit road, basically, except for Allgaier, except for Nemechek, except for Custer. Are they going to make it? Nemechek was backing up a big portion of the time. I mean, he was saving about a half a second to a full second almost every single lap, near with like 10 to go. And then you had Austin Hill, who came in with about 12 to 15 laps to go, I believe, and he couldn't make it, obviously. But what that did, he had fresh tires, enough gas to go to the end, so he had basically had to lap Allgaier and then try to catch him. He ended up in 4th, but I think that was one of the most masterful and most impressive racecraft situations I've seen in a driver, with Allgaier winning that race for the first win of, wild to say, with the first win that Junior Motorsports has had all season.
Yeah, it's amazing that it was the first win for Junior Motorsports. And, the race was okay. You're right. The most impressive part was him and really John Hunter Nemechek saving gas to finish 1-2. I guess the other exciting part would be they stopped it and restarted it 8 hours apart with a race in between. But, Ty probably would have won the race had they not had the issue with the steering wheel and all that good stuff. But Allgaier had a fast car, and Junior Motorsports needed a win, so they got one.
So 12 cautions, 81 laps, and there were 6 lead changes among 5 drivers. So Xfinity Series now switches and moves to Portland International Raceway next weekend. On to the Cup Series and the Coca-Cola 600. Get kicked off around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Track finally had begun to dry out after an earlier soaking, and we wound up with Ryan Blaney giving Roger Penske his 2nd win of the day, and also in the first same-year sweep of both the Indianapolis and NASCAR's longest race.
Yeah, this race, Penske gets both wins, the 500 and the 600. I thought this race was just as entertaining as last year. I know there were 16 cautions. It seemed like that was less than last year. Maybe it's because they were all kind of one on top of the other at the end of the race last year. But we talked about this car and this tire and this package and how well it is on 1.5-mile tracks, and I thought it was another good race on a 1.5-mile track.
I agree. I mean, even though Byron finished in 2nd, I thought it was a very interesting race. What I noticed really with the differentiation between manufacturers, it seemed like whenever the sun was out, the Fords were on top, and outside of Blaney. And then when the sun went down and when the track was in the shade, the Chevrolets and the Toyotas showed up. And I think that's going to play a very interesting role as we go later in the season when we hit more 1.5 miles. What is that going to be like when we have obviously some day races and some night races? Could that play a factor in who we see is at the front? I thought it was very entertaining, especially up to the end. And I'm looking forward to this weekend's race too. I think it's going to be another good one.
Well, Blaney also replicated his teammate Joseph Newgarden's Indy celebration by running into the grandstands and celebrating his win with the fans. That was entertaining.
Copycat.
Well, it's a teammate,
It's a teammate,
gotta do what you gotta
100%.
do.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing that Newgarden did it, and I mean, if it would have been anybody else outside of Penske, I'd have been like, oh yeah, he's copying. But the fact that it was a Penske driver, absolutely, go ahead, do it, celebrate. Especially, I mean, we saw how emotional Blaney was in that interview. He basically was saying the self-doubt was creeping in. Pretty much questioning himself as a driver. And now he won that race, one of the biggest of the year. I think the momentum for Blaney is just going to carry on later into the season.
So 2 major incidents on track to talk about briefly, and we may touch back on these later in the clear and no clear segment. But Kyle Larson gets loose, spins in front of the field, collecting Christopher Bell, Ty Gibbs, and Logano.
Dare we say Kyle Larson ran out of talent? Is that what we should say?
That's what others have said.
I feel pretty strongly about what Denny Hamlin said. He has a pretty good quote about a tantrum, and I'm there for it.
Well, that leads us into the next incident that occurred, and that took out Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. What we saw was Hamlin kind of crowded Elliott into the outside wall, and then Elliott hooked the 11 on the front stretch. Hamlin's car bounced off the wall after a brutal impact and collected Elliott's Camaro on the rebound.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Turnabout's fair play, man. I mean, I don't feel good for either one of them, but I mean, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Yeah, it's definitely looking at the data, looking at the replay. It is, unfortunately, and we've seen people get hooked a lot of times. One's very reminiscent is of when Bubba Wallace did the same exact thing to Kyle Larson. I believe that was maybe Kansas or Vegas. I can't remember what track it was.
Was it Auto Club?
Auto Club. No, I think it was more. I think it had more of a front stretch. I can't remember where.
I think it was Kansas.
Kansas, yeah. I mean, it's a tough situation to be in for Chase because he did get that one race suspension for it, and I've seen a lot of people on social because that's what I do as my job, my career, and I read posts all over the board, and I see a lot of people saying, "Oh, Hamlin's now crying because he was the one that was involved. Oh, Hamlin's playing the victim." Then there's other people like, "Oh, Chase didn't do anything; his toe link was broken." And then you have other people that are saying, "Oh, he shouldn't be penalized." And I don't know how you can argue the data, a fact of that he literally. If his toe link was broken, he wouldn't have made that vicious of a left-hand turn. That's my take on it. But
well, I don't think he could have. That's the whole point. I think in Hamlin's Twitter post, he made it clear, and he said, quote, "Removing all doubt, his steering came back to the exact position it had been previously after we came off the wall. The higher the line on the steering, the further left it's going." And he posted the SMT data feed showing that, frankly, he yanked the wheel to the left.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems clear. I am going to I'm going to slowly back out of this, a la the Homer Simpson meme, into the bushes and say, "Don't come for me or my family. I'm just a dude watching a race. I don't know nothing about nothing."
Well, I thought Jason would appreciate the telemetry we have on our screen that Denny Hamlin shared.
Oh, I 100% was looking at that.
You can clearly see when the blue line starts going up and down and up a little bit. That's when he's in the corner and coming off the corner. and at the very end, it just shoots straight up and doesn't come back down.
I may not be a racer, but as a coder and a programmer, I can tell you what certain things say. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so the Cup Series heads off to the Worldwide Technology Raceway for the Enjoy Illinois 300.
Well, the interesting part about that is Chase won't be there. So
he won't. He won't. And do y'all know who's filling in for him? Do you know?
I'm thinking about. I do, but go ahead and say it, John.
Mr. Corey LaJoie. All I gotta say is, I think that the 9 car rather. Excuse me. I think Corey could put on a heck of a show in different equipment. So, not saying he's gonna win, but I am very excited to see what he can do in a Hendrick Motorsport car.
Yeah, this is a put up or shut up opportunity for him.
It is, and also it is a put up or shut up for who's going to be in the 7 car, which is Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar is going to step in for LaJoie's spot. I mean, you saw what Carson was able to do in the 77 in the Xfinity race. I believe he finished, maybe wrong, I think it was 5th. But the fact that these two drivers have prime opportunity to really make that name for themselves in good equipment. Well, I wouldn't say the 7's good equipment, but Carson coming up from obviously the trucks, and LaJoie going into 9. I think it's going to be a very good race for them to show off what they can do.
It is no Knight Industries 2000. It may be good equipment, but Mr. Feeney's not driving. That's all I had to say.
Well, talking about Corey, he has this year in particular overachieved in his equipment. I think he's, without looking, somewhere around 14th, 15th in points. He's running about 20th every week or better. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but he's even staying out on track, trying to lead a lap to get bonus points, where in years past, that really wasn't something they were worried about. And he's got that. He's overachieving this year, and it's an opportunity for him in the 9 car and for Carson to step into the 7.
Oh, absolutely. I think the track itself is going to be a challenge. That is a difficult track to perform on. It's one of those hybrid tracks.
Well, teach me something real quick, guys. I should know the answer to this, but he's on pace to make the playoffs without a win. And I assume he will if he keeps performing like he has been.
I don't know. There's a lot of races to go.
I know there's a lot to go, but so if he steps into this 9 car, he still that doesn't affect his point total, correct?
In
other words, what car he drives,
I don't know.
Affect.
No, I think the points go to him.
I believe
that's what I thought. I just wanted to have one of you guys confirm that.
I'm not the guy to confirm it, but sure.
So iRacing announced partnership with FIA to bring FIA F4 racing to the platform starting next month here to the iRacing platform. I think that is the beginning.
Catch me up what F4 is?
So like baseball, you have got A, AA, AAA, and then the big leagues, right? Think of this as single A baseball for F1.
That makes total sense. Thank you.
You got it.
I don't know much about F4 racing, but anything they bring to the platform is good with me.
So the interesting thing is that I think this is the entree to bring F1 on a regular basis and bring more tracks to the iRacing platform.
Well, if that's it, then I'm in. I just hadn't heard of the specific title of it before. Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge to that is that because these cars are not stock, they don't have a standard rules package per se. There's so much craft that goes into the making of these cars that it's super difficult to make these appear like they are on track within iRacing. But interestingly enough, a lot of those F1 drivers are on the iRacing platform.
That makes total sense to me. So a lot of my experience and what my frame of reference for what I'm coming into here, I really saw the benefits of the digital representation of anything when COVID first hit, of course. And so seeing the Formula One drivers kind of resort back to the digital models of what was going on, this is all intensely interesting to me. So yeah, I'm in for it.
Clear. Not clear. Clear. Not clear. Not clear. Not clear.
Welcome to our third segment of the night, Clear, Not Clear, where we talk about what's happened on track or off track and take and get opinions of our co-hosts. So the first one, IndyCar's decision to throw a third red flag, setting up a one-lap shootout in the Indy 500.
For it, because I love anything starting with a shootout.
Yeah, absolutely. Clear. I know what we said earlier, and I made that goofy remark that people were saying they only did it because Roger Penske owns the track and they wanted to give his driver a chance to win. That's all baloney. The best thing, one of the best things NASCAR did in the last 15 years is get rid of races that finish under yellow, and it would be the same way for IndyCar, in my opinion. So Clear, absolutely.
Yep, all clear on my end. I think it helped enhance the race, and nobody wants to go to an Indy 500 and have it finish under caution. So absolutely clear.
All right, clear here as well. It was a great way to finish a race that already had been marred by two red flags. Just there trying to get the last few laps off. So clear here. On to our next incident. And we don't know the details, but someone's camera in the fans or somewhere in the track during the red flag of the NASCAR event, we saw Bubba Wallace in an animated discussion with Eric Almirola, and out of nowhere you saw a huge shove before security got in and broke them apart.
I like professional wrestling, so I'm here for it. Clear.
I don't know if I'm clear or not clear because we don't really know what happened. I guess my answer would be I don't care. But if you listen to Bubba said that Eric was two-faced, or he is two-faced. That kind of sounds like something stupid Bubba would say. And Eric said that they were talking about how they were racing each other on the racetrack, and that Bubba was just cursing at him and doing all that stuff. And so Eric let him know that wasn't acceptable by pushing him. At least Ross threw a punch. You don't pushing's for, dare I say, for the girls. I don't know.
Oh, not sexist there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's to follow up a previous comment I made. I'm in the social media world every single day. It's my day job, it's my career, it's my passion. So I've seen specifically what has happened. So what I know is that they were racing each other hard on the track like any competitors would, and Bubba thought that Eric raced him a little bit too hard. Eric thought that Bubba raced him a little too hard. Apparently, Bubba gave Eric the middle finger out the window. So, before the rain happened, obviously, that's when that happened. They came down pit road. Bubba got out of his car. Eric went to talk to Mr. Wallace about it. Apparently, Wallace started mouthing off at him, saying some not so friendly words, and Eric was like, you know what, you're not going to talk to me like that, and shoved him. And yep, you're correct, Elliot. Bubba basically said that Eric was two-faced, which I wholeheartedly disagree with, because I don't remember the last time that Eric Almirola did anything wrong in the Cup Series, because he's not that kind of guy. And also, Eric was Bubba said that it was just passion and all that stuff. So I understand Eric's frustration for standing up. I'm glad to see we see some drivers standing up for themselves, because it's about time we see some physical altercations, and we've had multiple this year. So on Eric shoving Mr. Wallace, I'm clear.
So Eric was triggered by the middle finger? Oh my God. He was fingered by the middle finger.
Eric was triggered by Bubba Wallace on pit road when apparently Bubba started cussing him out. Eric went up to Bubba and started to chat with him about, okay, why did you give me the middle finger, basically. Bubba started just running his mouth, apparently saying a bunch of curse words at him. Not sure what was said. Eric didn't like that part, and that's when he shoved him. I don't think it was because of the middle finger. I think it was because of what Bubba said on pit road.
So interestingly enough, the same guy, the same NASCAR security guy who got in between Ross Chastain and Noah Gragson just happened to be there and intervened.
Well, isn't that interesting?
Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Conspiracy.
It's choreographed.
All right. The incident with Chase Elliott turning Hamlin into the wall, wrecking them both out of the race.
So this just like makes my stomach turn, because I don't have a problem with being not clear on what Elliott did, because that's just stupid. This is different than the stuff that I talk about when I say, I think I said last week that I was okay with what McDowell did. Completely different, in my opinion, than what Chase did this week to Hamlin. The part that turns my stomach is I have to agree with Denny Hamlin, because I don't ever want to agree with Denny Hamlin. But not clear on Chase. Go ahead, Jason.
With Denny Hamlin, I was gonna initially, but after what you were saying, I mean, I respect what you're saying. Man. Well, I'm torn now. Guys, tell me what to think.
Well, the reality is that you had a driver who was angry, who got pushed up into the wall and got mad that he basically turned his car down into the right rear quarter panel and spun the driver headfirst into the retaining wall.
Yeah, and Chase is completely in the wrong.
Not cool.
and I know John hasn't answered what he's going to say yet, but I don't understand how Corey LaJoie is not the most popular driver every year. When I loved Bill Elliott. He doesn't race anymore, but I still do. When Chase does an interview, to me, and maybe it's just my perception, he just comes off as arrogant as can be in almost every interview he ever gives. So I don't know how people click that little button that says, "Oh, he's my favorite." I just think he comes off as a spoiled brat, but that's just me.
Well, you know why he's the most popular driver in NASCAR.
Please tell me.
Look at his fan base. Look at his fan base. I mean, if you take any, audience demographics, let's take marketing into consideration, I can guarantee you a lot of those are not guys. That's all I got to say. So that's why he's the most popular.
Okay, that's
driver.
what I was going to offer as the answer.
See, Jason and I are on the same page. Being wrong. No, Jason and I are on the same page.
I was afraid of being wrong.
And to give my answer for this, it was the most. When I saw it happen, I was like, "Oh, it's whatever." But then when they slow down the replay, I'm just like, Chase, why? You've already missed races because of your injury. Yes, you're mad, but don't do it there. Do it in another corner. Do it somewhere else. Don't turn him into the, into the front stretch wall. You're just literally asking to be suspended.
As a guy that seeks vengeance at every possible corner, it's a bad look if you go for that. That's just my personal advice.
Yeah. So, not clear.
Yeah, it's never been acceptable to right rear somebody, especially at Charlotte or even Atlanta. We can go all the way back to the one hot night. What was Kyle Petty did it to Davey Allison and didn't kill him or anything, but really hurt him. The bad ones would be Blaze Alexander's accident where he did lose his life, and that was what's the older Earnhardt guy's his name? I can't think of his name for some reason. Kerry Earnhardt.
Jeffrey?
No, it was Kerry Earnhardt. And he didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident, but it was a right rear, and you just don't do that. Even today, you don't do it. And he did. So he shouldn't be racing, and he ain't. Not next week.
All right, that kind of wraps up. This is our 6th episode, and we want to thank Jason Parker with Tech4Troops for joining us this week on the Highline. Jason, we appreciate your time tonight.
It was my absolute pleasure. I appreciate you guys giving me the time and space to pull out my inner nerd. But I know you guys are kind of into that, or else I wouldn't still be here.
All right. So tonight, the Tech4Troops series moves to Texas Motor Speedway for the Tech4Troops Lone Star 240. That starts at 8:30 Eastern. And you can find that on the IWM Broadcast Network on YouTube at youtube.com/IWM Broadcast Network.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. Tonight's race is the very first Dash for Cash race we have. So there's 4 drivers who are going to be racing for a little bit of money beyond what they can possibly win to win the race. Those 4 guys are Joey Doucette, David Watts, Tyler Peebles, and Zachary Ward. So be specific in watching them tonight.
All right. Well, that wraps it up, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we appreciate you liking and following us on your favorite podcast delivery method. You can also find this streamed on our social media channels. All right, everybody,